Hey YouTube, I figured since there isn't much information on how to take the bulldog apart, I would do a video. I'm going to try to do a 3-part video, and in the first part I'm going to be showing you how to tear your bulldog apart. Since there just doesn't seem to be a lot of info on the internet or on YouTube on how to do any mods to it or tear it down, I figured, hey, what the heck. But little story I got to tell you that made me want to tear the gun down and get more power out of it is I went deer hunting with the gun. First time I ever gone deer hunting with the gun. It was brand new. It was, about 6 weeks old, if that. And I shot a small deer, 90, maybe 100 pounds. It wasn't real big. It was the last day, so I wasn't going to pass anything up. And it was 15, maybe 20 yards. I'm thinking a little bit closer to 15. And I shot the deer. It was quartering to me, and I shot it in the chest, and it went through the chest, through both its lungs, and the bullet stopped just under the skin on the opposite side. And when I was walking up to the deer, I could see the bulge where the bullet was at. And I was shooting a nozzler. And I'm thinking, well, what the heck, man? That should have been a pass-through at 15 yards. But it wasn't. I was able to recover the bullet. I shot it with a nozzler. And let me see if I can focus this camera in on it real close like this. And here's the bullet that I recovered. As you can see right there, looks like one of the part of the rifle's a little tight. You can see right there in the groove from the rifling. Rest of them seem pretty good though. But I had almost pretty much no expansion, lost the red tip. And I'm like, man, I was really disappointed in the bulldog. I'm thinking that should have been a clean pass through at 15 yards. With all that stuff out there that you see. So I thought, well, I had to tear my gun apart. And I got to mod it. So this the video is not going to be so much as a step-by-step how to do it, but to give you guys a basic idea on how to take the gun apart and the troubles that I had and the mods that I make. And then the third video is probably going to be like, the results of the mods. So stay tuned, guys. Okay, guys, first things first. You need to bleed the air out of your air cylinder since you're going to take the whole thing apart. And right here, I already got the gun partially disassembled just for time's sake. But right here is the filler port, which I removed and left this part in. But right in front of it is your there's like a little Allen key in there. You stick it in there, you just barely crack it open, let all the pressure bleed out. It takes a few minutes. You'll hear it hissing. Just let it go until it's completely gone. And then once all your air pressure is out, I kind of did it the wrong way the first time. So I'm guessing this is the way it should be done, just from my previous experience with taking this gun apart. What you can do is you got the screw right here. Remove this screw right here, and then this is going to be fit. This is going to come off kind of hard, just because your barrel has this piece on it, and I'll show it here in a little bit. But what I did is I took all these screws out first, and I took all this off, this screw off, and whoops, I almost dropped the camera. But I had to take all the screws off. I took all the screws out of the stock, and also this right here, you can pop this off. This just pops right off, peels right off, and then underneath of that right here is how you adjust your hammer preload. For those of you who are wondering, never done it before. But anyhow, this rear end just kind of pops off, toss it aside. And then what I did is I pried this apart and I hammered this off the plastic stock piece, which was the wrong way to do it. What you need to do is you got to remove this screw right here, and then I had to take a rubber mallard and I had to pound on this right here. is how I think it should be done, which is kind of stuck on there right now, so give me a second. But basically, your barrel will be in here, and I took a rubber mallard and I was hitting on this piece right here, and you got to pound and pound and pound on it, and eventually you can get this piece to slide off. Now it's going to come off kind of hard because on the end of the barrel you have this piece. This is the end of the barrel. This right here goes into the receiver end. This is where your pellet loads, and then when you shoot it, this is where your pellet comes out. It's down here at the end. Well, this piece fits inside there, and it makes it kind of really hard to pound it out. But I believe that's how you got to do it. And if you look right here, you can see there's like a couple little channels in there. Well, the stock has like a lip. You can kind of see that lip. And what it does is it slide this right here. You gotta come down to the end like this, and it slides over the channel. So you basically gotta pound that off. And this is how I believe you have to do, and that's why I said this is just more of a guide than a exact how-to. And then I think what you should do is remove, after you remove this top piece, you can remove all the rest of your screws. And then once you remove all your screws, this will come off like this. You have your safety in here, you have your trigger assembly, and then you'll have this bar that goes back to your trigger over here, up in here. And that just, there's like a little pin right here, and your safety, all that will just come right out. And then you can remove the action from the stock, and then you can set your stock aside. And then after that, your barrel, oops, got that upside down. Your barrel's going to go in like this. You have your gun like this, and they have your trigger assembly, and back here there's like a pin that holds it in, and you just, it has like a little C-clip. You can pop that C-clip out, and then pop your little pin out, and your whole trigger assembly will come out, and it will look like this. That's your trigger assembly. See, focus the camera a little bit better. Kind of see right here. Let me zoom in. Kind of see right here. It's like that little C-clip that you got to pop off. I just used a nail. As I popped it off, the pin slides out. It all comes apart. And then next step, you have your two set screws that go right here. You got both these set screws, and you can see right here there's like a little indentation in that back set screw. So when you put your gun back together, you can't misalign the barrel. It lines it up perfectly. It has that like little nipple. You can see right there. So once you remove those two set screws, you got your barrel here. Then you can see how the rear has that indentation, which is where that nipple goes, and then the front one, right there, is just flat. So that's not that big of a deal there. So, also I got to tell you, I took these off first too before I even start taking anything else off, which sets right here in the side of your stock. Oops, can't really see that, can you? Sets right here in the side of your stock. And you take the screws out, and they just kind of pop out. This side, the gauge, I had a little bit of trouble getting it to come off. I think it was just because of the gauge here. It was like kind of catching and just wouldn't pop off. But those just come off, two separate pieces. And then, alright, for your air tube. Like I said, make sure you drain all your air out. And then for your air tube, when you put this back together too, this only needs to be hand tightened. You don't want to torque it down. It doesn't need to be torqued down. You put all this stuff together hand tight. And also, guys, let me also forgot to tell you, I'm no air gun expert. I'm just an amateur DIYer like you guys. So if you take your own gun apart and you fuck it up and you break it, that's your own fault for taking it apart in the first place. And I'm not going to show you guys how to put this back together, because if you can't figure out how to put it back together on your own from taking it apart, you shouldn't be taking it apart in the first place. Just throwing that out there for you guys. But anyhow, your air tube, it just pops off by hand, and you can unscrew this, and it might come apart like this, it might not, I don't know, just depends on your gun. But pull the tube off, it's just like that, set it aside, and then this here is your valve assembly. See right here, try to focus in for you guys. You can kind of see that, like, if you can't get this undone by hand, there's like a little Allen key in there, so you can stick your Allen wrench down in there and break it free. But this is already loosened, so you don't have to worry about that. This right here will just unscrew, and then you got to be careful because there's a spring on the inside of it. So this comes off. This looks like this. This comes off, and then you got your spring. It's shaped like a cone. The skinny part goes in on the inside like that, and then you have your poppet valve, which this end goes in when you put it back together. This end goes in like this first, and then your spring, the narrow part, will go in and it'll set on top of that. And then when you screw this in, this just goes right over the top like that. It holds your poppet valve in. And this is right here, this is what your end of this is what your hammer hits. It strikes it, it pushes back against the spring in the air, releases the air, and then it closes again. So that's right there is part of your valve assembly. So once you get that out, if you look inside here, you can see your valve assembly, or the rest of your valve assembly. Right down the side of there is where your, kind of dark, but trying to get some light in on it. But right there is where your valve sits in on it. I'll kind of show you guys here. Put this in first. Kind of wiggle it down in there. Shake it a little bit till it drops down into there. And then that'll drop down into there like that. And then that's how that seals. And then, let's see, let me grab the rest of this stuff. Then you got your hammer assembly. See, right here on this end is where your hammer assembly goes. And there's a little slot right here that you can see. Oh, also, I removed, there's like 3 different pieces in here for your trigger assembly. I left the one piece in, and there's another piece similar to this in size. It sits right here, and right here is where your trigger will connect to. And then what I did is I drove the pin out. A couple of pins, I drove them out so I could get the part of the trigger out, and then this right here will spin, which I'll show you later why you need it to move like that. But anyhow, back to the hammer. Right here you got this little dash, or like this little slot there, there's a screw on your hammer. This comes out, and this screw rides inside this groove right here, and keeps your hammer in place from going too far back, too far forward. And it's just a guide to keep it in place. So, and then you got your spring, which goes into the back of your hammer. And then you got this right here is like a little pin. As like a guide, it goes inside of your pin or your spring like that. And what that does is when you compress the hammer in, it helps to keep the spring from bunching up on you, keeps it straighter. And then you got your adjuster here. It goes together like this. So you unscrew this from the back of your hammer, pull this pin out, you got your spring, and then you loosen up this screw in that little slot that I showed you right here, and take the screw out. And then you'll probably kind of have to you might have to mess with it a little bit, because your hammer could be catching this. Kind of mess with it, you'll eventually get it out. And then the cocking lever, there was a screw up here. I removed that. Oh, there's also one back here, one that goes right in there, and what that does is kind of a set screw to hold this in place to keep it from coming loose. So you loosen up that set screw, back it out, take it out, whatever you want to do. And then you unscrew this one, and then the back part of your hammer is free, and that's still connected to the bolt probe. And that also, there's a piece back here you got to take off too. There's like a little cap right here. You guys see how to get that apart once you get to it. It's not that hard to figure out. But that cap comes off, and then your cocking lever is free once you remove this bolt. It's free, but the hammer won't come out. It'll slide back and forth, but it won't come out. Not yet. And then you'll have your little arm, and it'll have that little pin with that C-clip again. You pop the C-clip off, the pin comes out, and your whole cocking lever will come off. And then once you do that, you have to go under here. You flip that up like this, and it's kind of hard to show you. You'll see it once you guys get it apart. You'll be able to see it. You can go right up into here with an Allen screw, and you can loosen that up. And then on the bolt probe, this is how it looks. There's a screw. This is the back part. This is the front part, and you got the spring, and it slides back and forth on the spring like this. And so you have to remove this screw, and then you have to remove this screw, and then you guys are going to have to try to, basically wiggle it to get this crap out of there. And then after that, you should be able to get your bolt probe out of there. Not that hard. At least I don't think it is. It wasn't that hard. So it'll probably come out backwards. I just kind of slid it forward right out the front of here. But that back part of the spring, I had to go down through here. I could get an Allen wrench down here. I had no problem doing it. Just basically have to turn this sideways, and I went right down through that spring, broke it loose. Then that bolt, then the screw or the nut. Alright, sorry about that, YouTube. My battery died on me in my camera, so I'm back. But as I was saying, you got to flip this piece inside of there. And down inside of here you can get to a screw. And over here you'll get to this screw right here is up on this part. And the screw that holds the back part of the spring right here is right down in there. You'll be able to get to it, and then you should be able to get it out through the hole here for the hammer. And I believe that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. And then this is the first part. The second part, I'm going to go over the mods that I did to my gun. And then the third part will be how the results I got from the mods. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Also guys, I forgot to tell you, the hammer, when I pulled it out, it was dry. There was no lube in it. And the action of the hammer feels pretty smooth. I mean, you might be able to smooth it out if you polish it a little bit or not. I don't know. But yeah, the hammer's dry. Just so when you pull it out and you see it's dry, it's probably supposed. I'm assuming it's supposed to be like that. So, but thanks for watching. Hey guys, I also forgot to tell you, once you remove the barrel, right here underneath, yes, this front one right here, is your port directly down through here, and there's this little plastic piece in there. It's your transfer port. It's for your air that comes in through the valve. It comes up through this little port. It's just a plastic sleeve. It comes up through this little hole down in here and out your barrel. So when you pull your barrel off, all you gotta do is take it. All I did with mine anyhow, I took it, I flipped it upside down, I tapped it, just do like that, and this little plastic piece came out. If you plan on modding your gun, you don't need this plastic piece. Just toss it aside, throw it in the trash, put it away, whatever you want to do with it. This is part of the reason why the port is so restricted. Try to do a close-up here for you guys. Kind of hard to do this one-handed and focus the camera. But you're going to open up the ports when you mod it. You open up the port to the outer diameter of this. So, and I'll go over that when I do my mods, guys. But thanks for watching.